Hello, dear students. Myself, Dr. Sanju Hazria, Assistant Professor of English. In today's class, we are going to discuss Elizabethan period in English literature. So, first of all, introduction. The Elizabethan period spanning from approximately 1558 to 1603. So, you can understand this period started in 1558 and ended in 1603. And when Queen Elizabeth was ruling, so that's why this name is given to this period, represents a golden age. It is the golden age in English history, particularly in terms of cultural, artistic, and literary achievements. So we can say it is the golden period for all these achievements for cultural, artistic, and all the literary things. This era, named after Queen Elizabeth I, as we know, we can understand very well because this name is given due to the Queen Elizabeth was ruling in that period. It was a time of immense change and growth in England, marking the culmination of the Renaissance in England. So it was the pinnacle, it was the peak point of the Renaissance. Renaissance, sometimes it is also pronounced as Renaissance. The period is notable for the flourishing of English drama, the rise of prominent poets, and the development of prose. So this period is very great. It is notable for English dramas, for many prominent poets were writing the poetry, and it is also known for the development of prose. The Elizabethan age is often regarded as the pinnacle of the English Renaissance, a period characterized by a revival of classical learning, humanism, and the exploration of new frontiers in both the geographical and intellectual realms. So we can understand that it was a great period of classical learning, humanism. These are the characterization of Renaissance period and the exploration of the new frontiers in every sphere like geographical and intellectual realms. Background and context. So, to understand the background from where it started, the roots of the Renaissance, which profoundly influenced the Elizabethan period, can be traced back to Italy. Means this Renaissance started from Italy in 1453, following after the fall of the Constantinople. This event spurred a renewed interest, means people got interested in classical antiquity and the spread of humanistic ideals across Europe, and it reached England in 16th century when Queen Elizabeth I was ruling. By the time these ideas reached England, they had already begun to shape the intellectual and cultural landscape of the continent. So it shaped the intellectual and cultural landscape of the continent. Queen Elizabeth I's reign, beginning in 1558, as we know, she ascended the throne in 1558, was marked by relative political stability, and she provided the stable ruling and a consolidation of power which allowed the arts to flourish. The Elizabethan religious settlement in 1559 to 1563 was a crucial aspect of this stability. It was the great important aspect of providing this stability, of getting this stability, as it established a middle ground between Catholics and Protestants, effectively ending the English Reformation and giving rise to Anglicanism. So Anglican means was giving the rise to Anglicans. This religious and political stability provided a fertile ground for the blossoming of the arts and literature. So it was the peaceful era. So people were getting interested in improving their personalities, and they were interested in doing more adventures. So it was the blossoming period for the arts and literature. Characterization. Characteristics of the English Elizabethan period. What are the main characteristics of the Elizabethan period? The Elizabethan period is often characterized by several key features, means it is having several features that define its intellectual and cultural ethos. First is humanism. So, it was the humanitarian period, the revival of classical learning, and the emphasis on human potential. Means all people were given the freedom to empower themselves, to improve themselves. So it was giving the emphasis on the human potential, what they can do. And achievements were central to the Renaissance and the Elizabethan age. Humanism encouraged a focus on the individual, the study of classical texts, and a belief in the potential for human progress. So it was the period when focus was given on the individuality of the people, individuality on the persons. So this intellectual movement had a profound impact on Elizabethan literature, leading to the exploration of complex human emotions and experiences in poetry and drama. So we can see in the dramas of Shakespeare and the poetry of all the poets that they were providing and they were writing about their emotions. Second feature is desire for knowledge and scientific truth. The period was marked by a growing curiosity about the natural world. People were getting curious. They wanted to know what is means this world, and a desire to understand it through observation and experimentation. They were doing the experiments, they were searching new lands, they were trying to get the truth, they were trying to know the truth, scientific truth. So this quest for knowledge was reflected in the works of writers and thinkers who sought to explore new ideas and challenge traditional beliefs. So they were challenging the traditional beliefs, why it is happening, what is the reason. They wanted to know the logical reasons behind all the things. So this was the period when people were having the desire, they wanted to know and they wanted to understand, they wanted to get the more knowledge, and they wanted to understand why these things were happening. So this was the period. Third feature is renewed interest in the classics. People were getting more interested in the classical literature, classical things. So the Elizabethan age saw a resurgence of interest in the works of ancient Greek and Roman writers. So people were getting more interested in the ancient literature. This classical influence is evident in the themes, structures, and styles of Elizabethan literature, particularly in the use of classical allusions. They means writers were using classical examples, allusions, and emulation of classical forms, and they were evolving all the classical forms of writing. Fourth feature is age of explorations. People were exploring. So the Elizabethan, they were doing adventures. The Elizabethan period was also a time of great geographical explorations. People were traveling, they were doing adventures, they were searching new lands. Figures like Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Francis Drake expanded the known world through their voyages, and this spirit of exploration was mirrored in the literature of the time. And then they were writing about those means lands, and they were spreading that knowledge in the world, means how those lands were appearing to them. So which often explored themes of discovery and adventure. First romantic approach, it is also known the romantic period. So it was the first romantic approach. While the romantic movement would not fully emerge until the 18th and 19th centuries, so means completely it started in 18th and 19th centuries, and the seeds of romanticism can be seen in the Elizabethan period. But we can see it was the germination period, it was the seeding of the romanticism in the Elizabethan period. The literature of the time often emphasized emotion, imagination, and the beauty of nature, laying the groundwork for the later romantic poets. So they were means cultivating the land for the future romantic poets. Classical influence, we can see that they were interested in the classical literature. So it we can see that completely influenced, they were influenced by the classical people, classical literature. So the influence of classical antiquity was pervasive in Elizabethan literature. Writers like Edmund Spenser and Sir Philip Sidney drew heavily on classical forms and themes. They were drawing the examples, allusions from the classical themes, blending them with contemporary concerns to create works that were both innovative and deeply rooted in tradition. Means they were combining both contemporary and both the classical themes and literature in that period. So, the literature of the Elizabethan period. The Elizabethan period was a time of prolific, means they were writing versatile writings, literary output with significant contributions from poets, dramatists, and prose writers. So many writings were done at the time, and it was the golden period for the poetry, for the dramas, and for the prose. So the literature of this era reflects the cultural and intellectual currents of the time, combining classical influences with a distinctly English sensibility. They were adopting the themes, the forms of writing from the classical literature, but they were using very sensibly all these things. The literature of this period may be divided into three broad sections. What are these three broad sections? First, poetry. So poets, sonneteers, and metaphysical poets. Second, dramatists. So pre-Shakespearean dramatists for university wits. Secondly, Shakespeare and his contemporaries. Third is prose writers and essayists. So now we will start with poets. Poets, firstly, sonneteers and metaphysical poets. The Elizabethan age saw the emergence of several prominent poets. So we can see it was the emerging period of the several important poets who were instrumental in shaping the course of English literature. Who shaped the course of English literature? So the sonnet, a form of poetry, we know very well. What is sonnet? The sonnet, a form of poetry that originated in Italy, was particularly popular during this period. Sonnet is the 14-line poem. Firstly, Sir Thomas White and Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. So, Sir Thomas White, he was born in 1503 and died in 1542. And Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, he was born in 1516 and died in 1547. These two poets are often credited with introducing the sonnet form to English literature. So the credit is given to them that they introduced sonnet in English literature. Together they composed Total's Miscellany. This is very, very important writing. It was written by both these poets, Total's Miscellany, and it was published in 1557, also known as Songs and Sonnets, a seminal work that laid the foundation for the English sonnet tradition. So it was the writing that laid the foundation for English sonnet. White is often regarded as the first English sonneteer. So Thomas Waite is known as the first English sonneteer, while Surrey's contributions were praised by later poets like Sir Philip Sidney. Their work in Total's Miscellany marked the beginning of a long tradition of English sonneteering that would culminate in the works of later poets like Shakespeare. So they were the founder figures for the sonnets. Second poet, important poet of this era is Edmund Spenser. Edmund Spenser was born in 1552 and died in 1599. Spenser is one of the most important figures in Elizabethan literature, as we know very well. Known for his innovative use of language, he was using innovative means wordings. He was using that type of language that was new, and his blending of classical and contemporary themes. And he has combined the classical and contemporary themes in his writings. His first major work, the Shepherd's Calendar, it published in 1579, is a series of 12 eclogues that reflects his deep engagement with pastoral poetry. Pastoral poetry, it is about the country, it is about the village, it is about the shepherd, a genre that dates back to classical antiquity. So he has taken the pastoral poetry. Spenser's masterpiece, The Fairy Queen. It is the masterpiece written by Edmund Spenser, 1590-1596, is an allegorical epic that celebrates Queen Elizabeth I. So it is allegorical epic. In epical style, it is written and it celebrates the Queen Elizabeth I and explores themes of virtue and morality. So it is very interesting poetry written by Edmund Spenser, and you should read this epical poetry. Spenser also made significant contributions to the sonnet tradition with his Amoriti in 1595, a sonnet cycle dedicated to his beloved wife Elizabeth Boyle. His use of the Spenserian stanza in 9 line means, what is the Spenserian stanza? A 9-line verse form in The Fairy Queen is a testament to his innovative spirit and his ability to adapt classical forms to suit English tastes. So he has used 9-line stanzas that is called by his name Spenserian stanza, and he has used very, very perfectly in his writing The Fairy Queen. Sir Philip Sidney. Sir Philip Sidney is also a very important figure of Elizabethan period. He was born in 1554 and died in 1586. Sidney was a quintessential Renaissance man. Means he is epitome. He is the most important figure, and we can say he is exemplary figure in Renaissance period, excelling as a poet, soldier, and courtier. He was having all the qualities of the Renaissance man. His sonnet sequence, Astrophel and Stella, in 1591, is one of the most important works of the Elizabethan sonnet tradition. So, dedicated to Penelope and Devereux, the sequence explores themes of love, desire, and the poet's inner turmoil. So, it was dedicated to Penelope. Sidney's An Apology for Poetry, it is the literary criticism in 1595, also known as the Defense of the Poesy, is a key work of Elizabethan literary criticism. It is the key work. It is very important work written by Philip Sidney, and it is still read in PG classes, defending the value of poetry against contemporary attacks. His prose romance, The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia, in 1593, is another significant work. It is also very important work. It is prose romance, blending pastoral themes with elements of chivalric romance. So, means soldierly, it is showing the bravery, and it is showing the hero's romance. So, it is having those type of the elements. Michael Drayton. Drayton was a prolific poet whose works reflect the religious and historical concerns of his time. So Michael Drayton, he was born in 1563 and died in 1631. Drayton was also the prolific poet. He has written so many writings whose works reflect the religious and historical concerns of his time. His The Harmony of the Church, which was published in 1590, is a volume of spiritual poems that demonstrates his deep engagement with biblical themes. So he has used the biblical themes in his writing. For example, idea The Shepherd's Garland, it was published in 1593, and his historical poems such as The Legend of Piers Gaveston, 1593, further showcase his versatility and his ability to blend classical and contemporary influences. So most of the writers, most of the poets were using both themes, classical and contemporary. Samuel Daniel. Samuel Daniel was born in 1562 and died in 1619. Daniel was a poet and historian. He was both. Means he was writing history writings and he was writing poetry whose works reflect the intellectual currents of the Elizabethan age. His sonnet sequence Delia, it got published in 1592, was inspired by Sidney's Astrophel and Stella and furthered the English sonnet tradition. So he was also following the same tradition, sonnet tradition. Daniel's epic poem, The Civil Wars between the Houses of Leicester and York. It got published in 1595, reflects his interest in English history. While his A Defense of Rhyme, it got published in 1603, is a significant work of literary criticism. So means these writers were writing poetry, drama, prose writings, and they were also writing criticism. So we can say they were writing in a versatile form. So that defends the English poetic tradition against classical standards. Phineas Fletcher, he was born in 1582 and died in 1650, and Giles Fletcher 1586 to 1630. These two brothers were part of the Spencer tradition, means they were following the writing form of the Spencer, known for their religious and allegorical poetry. Phineas Fletcher's The Purple Island, it got published in 1633, is a complex allegorical poem that reflects his deep engagement with both classical and religious themes. So he has written The Purple Island. It is allegorical poem and it is showing his reflection towards his deep engagement with classical and religious themes. Giles Fletcher's Prize, Victory and Triumph, it got published in 1610, is another significant work exploring the themes of salvation and divine triumph in a style reminiscent of Spencer. So they were following the tradition written by, means they were following Spencer and Spencer form. John Donne. John Donne was metaphysical poet, as we know. John Donne, he was born in 1572 and died in 1631. He is one of the most significant figures in English literature, known for his unique style and profound exploration of complex themes. So he has used complex themes in his poetry, often regarded as the founder figure of the metaphysical school of poetry. So he is the founder, means he is the most prominent writer in metaphysical school of poetry. Donne's work is characterized by its intellectual rigor, inventive metaphors, and exploration of spiritual and erotic themes. Major works, most important works of John Donne. Firstly, Songs and Sonnets, got published in 1633. Donne's Songs and Sonnets are among the most famous examples of metaphysical poetry, as we know. It is the famous example of metaphysical poetry. These poems explore themes of love, death, and religion. So these are the themes he was using in his this poetry collection, often using striking and unconventional imagery. Donne's use of the metaphysical conceit, a metaphor. What is metaphysical conceit? A metaphor that draws a surprising connections between two seemingly unrelated things is particularly noteworthy in his poems. Poems like The Flea, The Good Morrow, and A Valediction Forbidding Mourning demonstrate Donne's ability to blend intellectual complexity with a deep emotion. So it shows how he has blended both intellectual complexity and deep emotions. Secondly, Holy Sonnets. It got published in 1633. The Holy Sonnets are a series of religious poems that reflect Donne's deep concern. It shows his deep thought process with the nature of sin, salvation, and divine judgment. Written during a period of spiritual crisis, these sonnets are marked by their intense emotion and their exploration of the relationship between the individual soul and God. So means what is the relationship of God and individual person, individual soul of God. Famous sonnets like Death Be Not Proud, it is also given in the syllabus of semester first. And Bet My Heart, 3% God are powerful meditations on mortality and redemption. So this shows the redemptive thought process and mortality. Devotions, third is Devotions upon Emergent Occasions. It got published in 1624. Devotions upon Emergent Occasions is a prose work written by Donne during a serious illness. He was at that time he was seriously ill. So the work is a series of meditations, prayers, and reflections that explore the themes of suffering, mortality, and divine grace. So the famous phrase, no man is an island comes from this work. This is great phrase, encapsulating Donne's belief in interconnectedness of humanity. So this shows the spirituality of John Donne. So dear students, for today's class, I think the sufficient material I have given, and in our next class we will discuss about Elizabethan drama and Elizabethan prose. So for today I'm saying bye to you. Study well and take care of your health also. Thanks for watching my video.